Thanks, Rosanna.
You're welcome. What a pain.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad this is the last time we have to do it this way.
Okay, I'm gonna do it to, I guess I'm just gonna have to do it to everybody that joins.
Yeah, I guess for whatever reason, when we join, it sets us up as an attendee, and then we don't have any rights to do anything. And then as soon as we become a panelist, then we're good.
It's weird because last time, so they just updated Cisco and there was no way to send an invite via panelist. Like I just went back and looked and I'm like, I don't know why it's doing that.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I feel like all of these so-called updates that they do with technology just make it harder.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I'm like triple looking everywhere to make sure I don't miss anybody who registers.
So did you approve everybody, Rosanna? We're able to?
Well, everyone who's done it so far, I've approved.
Who are we missing with the audit committee members?
Sharon Brown and Emil.
You
And
haven't, oh wow,
Rod
you haven't approved them?
Ingram and Jim Wood.
No approval yet?
They haven't registered.
Oh my. Dear. Oh boy.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
may have to call them out.
I can see that you're coming as attendees, but there's no like notification, so I'll just keep looking when the number shows up.
yeah. I swear, it seems like we always have it's some kind of issue with
It's
the
never
WebEx meeting.
easy.
Yeah, it's never just flawless without any issues. So that's why, because I remember the very first time we did one of these audit committee meetings through WebEx, that was the one where myself and the audit committee members were having trouble even joining.
Oh, so I was actually super excited. I said, oh, this is going to work great. It was easier to send, whatever. No.
Yeah, because like we had done other WebEx meetings before and never had any issues. So I was like, oh, this is not going to be a big deal. It's not going to be any problem. So I came strolling in like 10 minutes before the meeting started. I was like, I'll be fine. And then I couldn't get in.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And then what would happen every other meeting is like 5 minutes before it start, my phone would start blowing up from Steven every time. He wouldn't know his password, where the computer was, like phone, texting, email, I am all at once. And then Linda would be like, Jim Wood's calling. I'm like, okay, gotta go, Steven, bye.
It's always in the last 5 minutes, everybody's scrambling.
Yes.
Yeah,
And then
so
like and then everyone looks at me that just like last time we had someone present, they didn't email me the PowerPoint until after the meeting had started. So then when they're like, oh, Rosanna, can you pop up the email or the PowerPoint? I'm like, I don't have that.
Oh no.
yeah, I mean that's not your fault. I mean, if they don't send you the stuff in advance, then what are you supposed to do about it? But yeah,
I think
I
I
learned my
lose like
lesson.
years off my life every time we have one of these meetings.
Yeah, I was telling Sharon earlier, I was like, I learned my lesson the hard way from that first meeting when I couldn't get in and I had to end up phoning in and nobody could see me. I was like, I learned my lesson right then and there to make sure that I'm going to join early from now on. So that way, if there's any issues, I can make sure it's sorted out so that I can still join in time.
Oh, exactly. Lyndon had me do a test with him earlier because his stuff wasn't working. So he's like, let's test at 2:20. I said, okay.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised. I thought my dad would have joined by now because he said he was going to get in early as well because he hasn't done one of these before.
Oh, has he not used WebEx's platform in general?
Yeah, it didn't sound like it. He said that he had to actually register for WebEx itself because he hadn't done it before.
Oh, yeah. He emailed me earlier. I got him in. Like I approved his registration, I should say.
Right. But at least on the bright side, when this is over, we got a long weekend to look forward to.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yes. Because between this and VB time, I might lose my mind.
Yeah, VB time has been crazy.
Well, today I went to go clock out for lunch and it wasn't letting me. And I just fussed with it enough. I was like, you know what, I'll just deal with it later. So then I tried to clock back in. When I got back from my lunch, nothing. So I sent a message to somebody and they were like, check to see if your time card for this, oops, someone else was joining, period, has, oh, here's your dad, had been approved, and it had.
Hmm.
So that's why I couldn't clock in or out. When Lennon was approving my last pay period, he accidentally approved this pay period, so you can't make any changes.
Hmm.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I mean, all the challenges that we've had with VB time, I actually feel bad for you because you have so much more to do on VB time than the rest of us do. So if it's been rough for us, I can only imagine what it's like for you.
Oh my gosh. I didn't think it was going to be that bad, but
I mean, I knew there was going to be like growing pains and stuff like we have with any new system, but I mean, I feel like a lot of this stuff they should have had ironed out before it was launched.
you should, so like I'm a part of 2 teams for it, and they ping all day long asking questions and issues and so on and so forth.
Hmm.
And like it's only a few departments that are in the first wave.
Right.
So
Yeah, and a lot of the bigger departments haven't even joined yet.
I don't even want to, I told Lennon, thank God we only have, 7 people, because I would lose my mind.
And imagine like the supervisors that have 20, 30 people under them and they got to approve everybody's time every week.
Oh yeah. Well,
Yep.
Lyndon gets a notification, like let's say I clock in at 6:59 versus 7. He gets a
Mhm.
notification for that. So you get all these notifications for nothing, like nothing that's actually like worthy of anything. He's like, I would just start erasing everything. I was like, yeah, so imagine all of those notifications for 60 plus people. It would be like a full day worth of work.
Right. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
full-time
that
job in
alone
and of
is a lot of
itself.
work. That's a lot of work.
Well, hopefully
Hopefully
this goes smooth.
Yeah. So the really important people haven't registered yet.
No.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can.
Can't see me though, can you?
Yeah,
No.
because your camera's is covered, right?
No, it's not.
No?
No, and that's why I don't get it.
When I do that, and
Oh, wait
then
a
it's gonna
minute.
gray out.
Wait a
But
minute.
yeah,
I
that's
didn't
the one.
realize I'm upside down though. I did not realize
How do
that
you
there
do
was a
that?
slide thing on there.
Yeah,
Do the
but how
back
are you
thing.
upside down?
I don't know. I'm good. Let me see if I
Father and
can
son with a blue shirt.
change that.
I can do that too. How did that happen?
I will say this is the first time I've ever seen anybody upside down, so I don't know how that happened.
Are you on your phone?
No, I'm on my laptop.
And your laptop is correct way?
Yeah, it's definitely not upside down.
Raise your hand like that.
Let me see here. More
That's
options.
weird.
Yeah, I'm
Camera
trying to see in
settings.
the settings if there's a way to like rotate the.
Yes,
No,
I'm doing
leave
it
it that
well.
way.
Did Sharon register?
I thought she did. She was the one
Yeah.
who told me to register.
Yeah,
Um,
she's not in as
I
a, she's registered and approved.
I did realize that there's 2 separate invites on our calendar, and the one that went out this morning is the one that I think has the correct link to join.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it's a matter of she's in the wrong calendar invite.
Now I'm not even on here.
So you got 2, so you probably got an invite via when you were approved. right, Danny? Everyone got like an approval in email
Mhm.
from WebEx.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hold on. She's calling me. I'm gonna. Hello.
Hey, let me try this link here thing. I need to register, and then when I go and register again, it says you're already registered.
Okay, use the link. Which link did you say to use, Danny?
The
I
latest
noticed there
one.
was 2 different calendar invites on there. If you double click the invite, um, and it'll say like up in the top left, like the date that you accepted the invite on. And there was one that we accepted all the way back in January, I guess, when you sent out the invites for all the meetings. And then there's one that came in this morning.
Okay.
So you want to join through the one that came
I
this
sent.
morning. Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know what to do here. I don't want to be upside down the whole meeting. That's
That's
crazy.
gonna affect your blood flow there, Ken.
Yeah, I'm already starting to get a headache. Blood rushing to my head.
It'll say you already registered for this event.
Maybe try to.
Just go to calendar and then click on the one with the path.
If
Hey,
I
Dad,
do
you might
have
want to try to leave and rejoin and see if that does anything.
Try to leave and rejoin. Use the calendar invite that I sent you.
Yeah, and the one with the path.
telling you I did,
Okay, what about the one in the email I sent?
I did. I'm going out and going that way too. I tried every which way.
Hey, there's Sharon.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me.
Just keep saying register. I've tried every link. I've tried every which way. I've been going back to the email.
All right, I'm going to leave.
It says you've already registered.
Everybody being here. And we made it through almost through another fiscal year. So as we come close to the end of the fiscal year, I want to thank the Audit Committee once again for volunteering to serve and provide a valuable service to the city. And I want to thank my staff for the work that we were able to perform for the last year. As everybody knows, we were, most of the year working under pandemic conditions. I think we were still able to continue to be productive. And as we come out of the pandemic and get into more of a back to normal, we hope to even accomplish more in the upcoming year. Okay. All right. So I'm going to turn it over to our audit committee chair to formally call the meeting to order. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, just pull up. And by the way, Rod is here. So he is we're gonna make it easy, and he's just gonna sit in on here. Okay. So Rod did join us. So Sharon, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Lyndon. Welcome everyone, and thank you again, Lyndon and staff, for all of your work, your hard work through the year. The first item on the agenda today is the approval of the Audit Committee minutes of March the 18th. Do I hear a motion for approval of the minutes?
I get a motion to approve the minutes for the 18th. Over.
Do I hear a second?
Karen's on mute. Rosanna, can you just unmute everyone? It looks like everybody's on mute. Either you unmute or have everybody unmute themselves.
She's not showing as mute on my end.
Okay. Maybe
Sorry.
they needed it.
Karen, are you here?
Yeah, Karen's there. Oh, she's flipping between muting and unmuting. We'll do this. She seconds.
She seconds, good. All those in favor, please respond aye.
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 Okay. Since we'll put you on the speaker since we're having problems hearing you. So any second, you seconded it, right?
I did multiple times.
Okay, we got you.
And I think I heard,
Yeah, she's in favor. Karen voted in favor.
so that's all three of us have voted in favor. Approval of the minutes is completed. Now, the next item is the adoption of the meeting agenda for today. Do I hear a motion for the approval of today's minutes? Meeting.
Approval,
Karen, you
approval to adopt today's agenda. Over.
Second,
second, Karen second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, and she aye.
Karen did,
Yes.
and I'm an aye. So all members have approved. The agenda is approved for today. Thank you. I'm going to turn the meeting back over to you, Lyndon.
All right, thank you, Sharon. So first up, what we always try to present is the status of all the various recommendations that we have made throughout the year. And everybody should have a copy of the annual audit follow-up activities. After this meeting, we will make sure this is submitted to the city manager as well as disseminated to the department directors. Gretchen coordinated bringing the annual follow-up report together. So I'm going to have her walk us through it. So if Rosanna, you want to bring that document up, Gretchen will do a brief overview of the annual follow-up activities.
Okay. So Rosanna, we go to page 4 of the document, not page 4 number. There you go. Okay, so this is the required by the city's audit charter that we review the status of all open recommendations annually. So, and then we report them to you. So here we are doing that quarter later than we have been doing it in the past, but you know, we did get it done. As you can see, as of March 31st, 2021, we have issued, I want to say, actually, this is small on my screen. I'm so sorry. Okay, we have 93.3% of all of our recommendations have been implemented. 2.5% are still open, and 24 or 4.2% are what we would be consider closed. And that's out of 128 audits that we have completed since 2009. So if we go down just a little bit, okay. So to go over what those three things mean, implemented means that management has taken the necessary actions to address the finding or deficiency that we had notated. An open recommendation would be one that is still being worked on by management or awaiting budget approval or something of that matter. And then there are four circumstances where we would close a recommendation without any action having been taken. One is it's no longer relevant. Two being implementation is not feasible due to budget or staffing limitations, contractual issues, laws, regulations, or what have you. Three, management does not agree and is not going to do anything to address the area. And the fourth one is when the recommendation went all the way to city council and they said no. So that fortunately, it usually has to do with A or B, not C or D. So on the 24 that we have closed, there were none closed this past year. Of the 24 that have been closed, when we closed them, there was a notation as to which of those criteria they were closed under.
Gretchen,
Yes.
can you further explain C and D of what you just covered?
Okay. Roseanne, will you go back up there? So where is it that, so one is where management has decided. So that would be the city management. The other where council said, no, we're not going to do it.
Okay, when management says they're not going to do it, what action does the department take, and is that addressed in your charter?
What do you mean? Okay, so they would respond in writing that they don't agree with the finding or the action.
Yes. Then where do you take it?
Well, it depends on what it is, you know, what the actual recommendation is. If we feel it's a high risk area that needs to be addressed, we would continue to pursue that on up the chain of command, more or less, and take it to council. And then it would be up to council to say yes or no.
And so what is the difference in the ones that have gone to council?
Well, we've never had one go to council. We've never closed one for C or D. So I can't, you know, I don't know what would happen.
And
Yeah,
is
but
that,
I guess the question was,
I can get back with you, Sharon, though. I'll look into it.
okay,
yeah,
Okay.
so I think we need to look, and I'm not sure if we have or not, but I'll have to go back and look. But I guess the concern is on C.
Right,
Because
so-
if management does not agree with the recommendation, number one, it would never even make it to the audit report, because we're going to hash that out prior to. But if there has in fact been some, I don't recall off the top of my head,
I don't think that
where-
there's been one at all.
where they agreed, and then after we issued it, then they said, no, we don't agree, and we're not going to do anything about it, and you can't make us.
Generally, they might take an action that's different than what we recommended, but
We'll
still
be in
address the
agreement.
same.
Yeah, we will be in agreement with it. Okay, but we'll look at if there were, we can explain why, but I don't recall off the top of my head where we had a finding in the management response, they say agreed, and then they didn't do it.
No,
but then
we've had-
you will do a little research to see if that is in your charter to make sure that leverage is there.
Right, but Sharon, along those lines as well, you know, management it's management's right, as well as, you know, the governance structure within the city to accept the risk. And not
Yes,
do
but it
anything.
should be at a level above your office.
It's not our office.
Okay,
These are the recommendations go to management. We're not making this decision.
I understand. Thank you for the discussion.
Okay.
And then I was gonna say, echoing.
Yeah, I can hear you, Karen. Karen has a comment.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I understand what Sharon saying, that you can give that recommendation to that management, and expect that it might be elevated to a level above them, like with us, if management later comes back and tells us, not gonna management just accept that that level of management accepts the risk, we would take it to our CEO.
That's correct. That,
They agree.
yeah, that's correct. I'm not sure if were you guys able to hear what Karen said?
No.
Yeah, so basically, she said, which we would do if we do issue a audit recommendation and management does not agree, then obviously it has to go to a level higher than, just say, for example, the director, because the director can't arbitrarily just say, we aren't going to do it. If we made the recommendation, but they would get buy-in from someone above them, the deputy city manager, the city manager, and so forth. Fortunately, we haven't had to run into that situation. But if it does, that's how it's rectified. It's not arbitrarily going to be dropped. The deputy city manager that's overseeing that department would also have some buy-in as well. Okay. And when we issue this audit follow-up, this goes to the city manager, deputy city managers, and all the directors, so they're aware of what's been closed and the reason why it was closed. So, okay. All right, Gretchen, if you want to continue on.
Okay. All right, so the exhibit 2 just gives you a pictorial view of the recommendations that have been implemented. They're shown in green. Recommendations that have been closed are shown in red. And then purple are open. So right now there are, and you need to go up just a little bit, please. Okay. So there are 14 open recommendations as of March 31st. And those are listed in Appendix 1. And there's a brief description of the status, where they are in that process. Appendix 2 shows you the list of all of the audits that we've done. It gives you a summary of the number of recommendations and also shows you the status of the recommendations for all of the audits. Okay. Exhibit 3 is there's actually a typo here. It's 11 formal recommendations. And so we're going to make that change before it gets sent out. That were made by the investigative side of our office during the 15-month period that this covers. As you can see, all 9 of those were implemented. 2 are still open. One of the 2 is an active court case. And then I think that's it, if there's more questions.
Okay. And like I said, once we make that correction, Rosanna, we want to make a note to ourselves to get this to the city manager, the DCMs, and the directors. Okay. Any questions from the audit committee? All right, thank you. Okay, so that was follow-up. Now we're going to move to this current status of our 21 schedule, and then we're going to get into the 22 schedule. So you can see we have completed the majority of our audits. July, we've had an exit conference for the police body-worn camera program, and we are on the schedule to actually present the body-worn camera audit to the city council at the July 13th meeting. Okay, so obviously there's a lot of interest in that audit, both from the public as well as the council. And so we have made sure we have tried to be as thorough as possible. Both Tony and Gretchen and Rosanna worked on that audit. So I think we've done a thorough job, and we look forward to presenting that to the council next week. Next month. And once it's issued that Friday, the audit committee will get a copy of that. Surface water regulatory compliance program, another audit with a lot of interest, particularly from the council. That has commenced. We're in the planning phases of that audit. We've done some ride-alongs with some of the inspectors in our stormwater inspection group. Okay. So that audit has also been commenced. In regards to the last two audits that aren't started, so wanted to inform the council that as opposed to carrying both of those audits forward, the CARES Act and police property and evidence, in meeting with my team, we have decided that there's other higher areas of risk. From the CARES Act, our finance department, along with our management services department, are doing an excellent job in regards to monitoring the funds. Additional funds are coming under other federal programs. And the aid coming from the CARES Act was to help benefit the city and the residents. So I think at the end of the day, even if there were issues or concerns regarding accountability or eligible expenses, it would, be, to me, it would have to be something very severe material, even to warrant the federal government requesting any type of reimbursement, but they always have that right to do so. But from our perspective, in comparison to some of the other areas, that was the rationale for not starting that audit, because management services and along with finance has been briefing the council in regards to funds spent, funds unspent, and the nature of those expenses. Police property and evidence, we, under the prior police chief, he did ask if we could do that annually, and which we have. I believe we've been doing it at least for 10 plus years. Every year they've improved their internal controls, they've improved their process. That's reflected in the audit program. Our audit report. So there hasn't really been significant findings in those areas. So we aren't going to do it in 21. We'll revisit again in future prior years as systems or processes may change. But due to our limited resources, 12 and 13, we have decided not to carry forward. And when I go over our 22 audits, you will see the proposed audit schedule.
Okay, so Lyndon, before you move on, just going back to the CARES Act, I wanted to mention that was also reviewed by the external auditors. The 2020 expenditures were as part of the Single Audit Act. And
Yes.
More than likely, I'm 99.999% certain it will be reviewed as part of the FY21.
Yes, good point.
As well. So that was another reason why we were
that is correct. That's correct.
Confident in postponing that.
Okay. Any questions on the audit schedule for 21? All right. Okay, for fiscal year 22, we're going to turn the page and so Roseanne, if you want to actually bring the 22 schedule up. and we do this because the city charter says we need to present to the audit committee annually the planned audits. And we do that every year. And it's not necessarily for approval, but to informative. For the city code, the city auditor is ultimately responsible for determining the audit schedule, but obviously we want to inform you of what we will be reviewing. Okay, and this is not going to be any particular order. So number one, if you've been watching any of the audit committee meetings, I think they went past close to 11 o'clock. And, one meeting went past 1 a.m. Debating the various aspects of the short-term rental program, Airbnbs, VBRO, the various short-term rental programs. And as a matter of fact, a special session has been called for next week for the city council to continue to debate and iron out the program. So it's obviously, we'll probably wait until that is settled and then take a look to see where, in what areas we can add value to looking at the program, because it is a important component of attracting not only tourists, but other travelers to our area. And we want to make sure we can help in whatever manner we can with the program. So that is going to be on the schedule for next year, and depending on what council decides that and how quickly they decide will determine the timing of when we actually commence that audit. Number two, review of city garage parts operations. We've had our longtime manager over at the city garage has left. It's an area where there's some debate on privatizing the parts room or keeping it ran, as a city operation. So because of the change, because of some of the decisions, I think we can provide some information to help management make some decisions in regards to what is the best direction to go with in regards to the management of the city garage. Procurement of sole source contracts. We've had some issues that have come about. Some have came through Sharon, through the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline in regards to sole source contracts. That is something we have been meaning to do, and with some of the issues that have come across our desk over the last fiscal year, we are including that on the schedule because we all know there is an inherent risk anytime you're awarding sole source contracts. Okay. Number four is the review of the cell phone towers and reconciliation to revenue generated from the towers. There's been a proliferation of cell phone towers throughout the city, which is a good thing, right? We want to have coverage in all areas of our city, and not only coverage, but reliable coverage. But we have had issues in the past actually keeping track of not only the towers, but the payments from granting leases for various companies to put their towers up. Okay, so we want to make sure, number one, are we accounting for all the towers? And ideally we have have it in GIS so we can have like an overlay of all the towers throughout the city. And is someone actually tracking and monitoring the revenue received based on the agreement we have for each respective tower? Okay. Number 5 is, this is required every other year, the actuarial evaluation of the OPEB, other post-employment benefits liability. That's GASB 75 now, correct, Gretchen?
Yes.
Okay. And number 6 is more of a follow-up audit on, we did a audit in 2017 of the Economic Development Investment Program grants awarded. They reward probably close to $1 million plus to 30 various companies. The last time we did the audit, we went through fiscal year 2018. So we have at least 3 more years, 19, 20, 21 of EDIP grants that have been awarded. From the prior audit, we know they had actual issues. And the issues related to, we were awarding the grants, but from a management and a staff standpoint, we weren't necessarily ensuring all the grant conditions were met. And a lot of times that has to do with jobs created, capital investments. So while we welcome the cities, welcome the companies, we do want to ensure that if we're providing grants as an incentive to either relocate or stay within the city, that those conditions are in fact being met by those respective companies. Okay, so those are Economic Development Investment Program grants. All right, number 7, as I mentioned, we just got started, and that's going to be of our surface water regulatory compliance program. Otherwise governed by the DEQ's MS4 program. Sharon, you may be familiar with that, having come from DEQ. Okay. All right. So those are the various audits, and then the remainder of the projects are attestation or other projects. Striving for excellence, our healthcare claims contingency audit, which is underway. IT general controls review, working with our external auditors. And as we mentioned at the last meeting, it's Cherry Beckert now. We've had some issues with the rollout of our Oracle Financial Cloud system. So we're going to try to devote some time to them. We finally went to a time and attendance time management system, just rolled out, is it June 1st? And we're continuing to roll it out.
Right. So the first wave went June 3rd, actually.
Yeah.
And then there's 2 more waves coming.
Okay. And so
Each
Karen
wave.
asked, so Karen asked a question. So 11 and 12 will be performed as a non-audit, more consulting type services, Karen. We want to see what we can do to help, because a year later with the Oracle Financial Cloud, there's still existing problems that are preventing the timely payment of our vendors. And so we're going to approach that more from a non-audit consulting type service. Okay. All right, any questions, comments on the fiscal year 22 audit schedule?
Lyndon, I have a question on auditable entities.
Yes.
I know you have, I can see that there's payroll listed under finance, and I can see that there are human resource services. in the various departments, there are those like activities. How does that fit into, do you capture that when you go into payroll? You look at those arms, or how do you ever get to those arms that are in the departments?
Okay, so that's a good question. So the auditable, the level that we chose for auditable entities are at the budget unit level. So because you can be, you know, you can choose how you list out auditable entities, and you can be really high level. You can go really deep into the woods and have, you know, 4 or 5 pages of auditable entities. For us to have like a grasp on it, we started with budget entity. If you are a budget, unique budget code, and you are payroll, we'll list payroll. So then once we get into those respective programs, there may be other arms. Obviously, we're not going to do an entire audit of any department or necessarily any auditable entity, but a component of it. So when we get into that area, or if that area resides under, say, for example, payroll, it may be listed at payroll, but then we're going to be looking at specific risk areas within that area. So it may not necessarily be listed out, but it's going to be considered when we get into that area.
So when you're in payroll, looking at the payroll function, knowing that that function is scattered throughout the city, then that may be one of your objectives.
Well, it's not scattered throughout the city. So payroll is payroll processing, but it's only processed out of the payroll department in finance. Now, every other department has a timekeeping function where they're going to submit, but the function of payroll is in fact only under finance.
So Lyndon, and maybe this will be a little bit helpful for Sharon. So if we were to go in and audit payroll, we would be looking at the citywide processes that would encompass any work for payroll or leave time that's done in the departments as well.
Yeah, okay.
So it would fall under payroll, but sometimes within a program unit or a budget unit, which is our audible unit, we would also review whatever they did in relation to payroll.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. So for payroll, even with HR, the owner or the function may be under a department, but a lot of those functions are in fact citywide. Okay. All right, and while we're here, our audit, we flip back to the audit. If we flip to the next page, Rosanna, audit resources. And I think I will touch on it later. But last month, we lost one of our auditor positions. Stephen Volge has moved on, so that position is vacant. The other position that the auditor 2 was the position that in fiscal year 21 was removed. The FTE was removed based on budget savings. So that position has been given back to us, but it has only been given back to us for fiscal year 22 for half a year. So we'll be eligible to fill that position beginning 1/1/2022. So we are down some resources. Okay. We brought on as temporary help using contracted worker Ken Reinhardt, who I believe is on the call. So he's been a big help to me working on the surface water regulatory compliance audit. Okay, but we're doing the best, and like I said, I'm proud of the work we've done. Consider we are short on resources, and we've been short on resources for a while. Okay. All right. Any questions on the audit schedule?
Lyndon, quick question for you for
Yes.
you said that you had the new position that's for fiscal year 22, but that's only for half the year. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What was I mean, obviously the budget, but what was the thinking behind just 6 months?
Yes. So, you know, they're trying to come out of, and this is this was a city manager decision along with the council. As a matter of fact, the FTE was not included in the fiscal year 22 budget. It was a position we had, they took it away,
Right.
and we obviously requested for it back. So they did not include it. I had to have a discussion with the Vice Mayor, Jim Wood. He's not on the call, but he's a big advocate for what we do. So based on the tight budget and not knowing, you know, because when they approved the budget, what the governor was going to do in regards to the executive orders, they were trying to be very, very conservative. So it was basically, based on cost savings. So if we start you half a year, then we have the other half to capture cost savings. So it was purely a budget reason in regards to why they said
Right.
you can have the FTE for 1/1. You know, then after after that, then obviously it'll be a position that's funded for a full fiscal year.
Oh, okay. But this is I may have missed that. You said it's for fiscal year 22. It's just a half year.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Which is the upcoming fiscal year starting July 1.
I understand. Yep. Okay.
So that it'll be open from July 1 through to December. Now the recent vacancy, Karen's in the chat asking, we are allowed to fill that, and we will soon be commencing that. Okay, but as we found, you know, we can have the FTEs. Is, you know, having the FTEs is one thing. Filling it with a quality auditor is something else. So we'll see how the job market is out there. You know, we're not paying minimum wage, so hopefully we're not having as hard a time as everybody else as filling their positions.
Yeah, it almost seems like they, in a sense, sort of hamstrung you for the 6 months. And I understand the budgetary concern. It's just, can you fill that in 6 months, knowing, you know, with all the stuff you had to go through last year to try to get the quality folks that you want in? It almost seems better, I think, is the word, or more optimal, to just keep it as a contractor service, and then with the promise of 23 going to the full year, so to speak. But that's just my perspective. But
yeah,
I completely understand.
We'll see. You know, we have the option, you know, and we do have dollars in contracted manpower, which we will utilize until we can fill both of those positions. But in the meantime, we're going to plug on as best as we can. So, okay. All right. Any questions on the audit? Additional questions on the audit schedule? Okay. All right. So we're going to move on. Since the last audit committee meeting on March 18th, we have issued 2 audits. You have both of those, and just, you know, as a courtesy to ensure you didn't have any further comments or questions, we'll do a quick briefing on those 2 audits. So the first one was conducted by Gretchen, results of agreed upon procedures for public health emergency leave. So I'm going to turn it over to Gretchen. If you want to kind of just first, Gretchen, give, you know, an overview of what that objective was and why we even did it, and then you can get into the results.
Okay. So I just got a text from Rosanna. She's having some sound issues. So,
Okay, we can hear you and we can see the screen, so we're good.
right, but she can't put the screen up because she doesn't, oh, her internet's out. Okay, so I'm going to talk without you're seeing the report up on this. Okay, there we go.
There it is.
Okay. So basically, this was a project that we worked on that was released. The final report was released in April. So it's been a while since any of us have revisited these issues, but the public health emergency leave came about as part of the response, the federal response to the pandemic. Basically, what the federal regulations said was to allow for 80 hours of paid leave for full-time and the equivalent of 2 weeks of paid leave for all part-time employees to address issues with the virus, whether they thought they were positive, they tested positive, or somebody under their care tested positive. The federal regs also allowed for extended childcare under the FMLA to address the closing of schools and things. And if you full-time employees were eligible for up to the full 12 weeks, that's 400 hours. No, I'm sorry, not the full 12 weeks, 10 weeks of childcare at 2/3 pay. And part-time employees would be eligible up to the equivalent of a 2-week thing. So then we actually looked at certain different areas with this. It was agreed upon procedures. So we looked to see if the city's policy for implementing this adequately addressed the requirements of the federal regulations. It did, and it exceeded it. We actually had a more lenient policy. We allowed for a rollout of 2 weeks initially. That was then when some fine tuning of the regulations came into play. We forgave the 2 weeks. So everybody who had taken those first 2 weeks got another 2 weeks. And then we were a little bit lenient on how we used it. We gave people full pay for the first 2 weeks of their child care leave rather than the 2/3 pay for all of it. So these are the recommendations that resulted from our review of this, and these are recommendations that apply to any leave type. Some problems within our current processes, of course, raise their heads at the fact that the law was put into place, I believe it was March 13th. We made this leave available March 13th, so we rolled it out very quickly. And when you do that, we're always going to have a look back period. So the recommendations we made, there were 4, and we're basically looking at our process for adding or changing and the testing of leave. So you can see what they are. And that's pretty much it, unless anybody has any questions. Hey, that's good.
Okay.
I hope.
Okay, so the next audit we issued, and this was issued in April of, yeah, this was issued in April as well. The audit of the investigation review panel, otherwise referred to as the IRP. There's been a lot of talk, not only in Virginia Beach, but throughout the country in regards to having some form of citizen review board, citizen investigation review panel, to look at some of the issues that have arisen between police and citizens. You know, obviously with the George Floyd case, there was a lot of calls for social justice, enhancing police interaction and giving the citizens more rights or oversight. The one thing we have in Virginia Beach is we are ahead of the curve in regards to a lot of localities throughout the country. There's only 3, and this was all in the report. There's only 3 localities at the time of the report that actually have some form of citizen review board, or what we call an investigation review panel, of Richmond, Charlottesville, and Virginia Beach. Okay, so what we wanted to do was look at how our current IRP was working, because even while we were doing the audit, there was still a lot of talk of revamping and creating a different type of citizen review board. Okay. So the purpose of the audit was to determine whether the IRP is operating effectively and efficiently, and basically giving those citizens that may have had an encounter with the police after a internal affairs investigation, if they did not agree with the police's internal affair investigation outcome, they have the ability to request a review by the IRP panel. Okay, so we wanted to make sure they were currently, our HR along with the police is in compliance with the city policy governing the IRP policy. We benchmark, as you saw in the report, the IRP to the new legislation, which passed by the General Assembly, and validate whether management has implemented some of those prior corrective actions we noted related to the program. Okay. And I would say overall, as we spelled out in our audit report, that it is in fact operating as intended. You know, obviously there's opportunities for enhancement. And so out of that review, we did have a recommendation, because of the talks of creating a separate or a different kind of citizen review board, create a diverse task force to seek resident input to revamping the current IRP. And if I'm correct, I believe they had their first meeting last night. I don't know if Rod was.
Just left it.
Yeah.
It was right before this meeting.
Oh, so it was today.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's an hour ago.
Okay, so they did actually have their first meeting. And they have asked me if I would be willing to present our audit reports to give some perspective to that new committee. There's a brand new committee that's meeting to discuss how do we create a citizen review panel? What rights are they going to have? Are they going to be able to have investigation and subpoena powers and so forth? So that's what they're meeting on. Okay. You know, we had small things, just ensuring for the current committee that conflict of interest forms are completed, evaluate the IRP process. Okay, but overall, you know, I wouldn't say we had any major findings. It's operating as intended. There have been tweaks, as we reported in the audit report, that pretty much allows right now anybody that wants to have a panel meeting, you'll have a panel meeting. Okay, you don't have, it doesn't have to be approved by the panel. You can request a meeting, and your case will be heard. And your case will be heard, and that's the way it's going to operate until if there is a new IRP or citizen review board. Okay, any questions? Okay. All right, and then also another project, and this was not necessarily an audit, but if you've been either reading the paper or watching Andy Fox, you know, we've been working on Vanguard Landing. As a matter of fact, we had a meeting yesterday at the Development Authority. they were, and it's, you know, it could be misleading because they were in default, but it was in what we call an event default, you know, not necessarily a financial default. They were supposed to have their first building built in 2019, which they did not. And so by the note, the letter of the note, they were in default. Okay, so at the Virginia Beach Development Authority meeting yesterday, they granted Vanguard Landing 12 more months to get their site plan in, secure, and be able to secure and close on their financing. But within 60 days, they have to make a $500,000 payment towards the $2.9 million they owe. Okay, so that's something that came up that I was asked to look into, and we're glad that has been resolved for now. Okay, any comments or questions? All right, so that's where we stand in regards to where we are currently.
Sharon has a question in the chat.
I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, so thanks, Tony. That was not part of the audit plan because it was a issue that was brought to our attention. And so obviously, if it's something significant, whether it's part of our audit plan or not, we're going to look at it. And it wasn't an audit per se, more so of falling under the category of other, but it was not part of, it was not a planned audit, nor was an audit per se conducted. Okay. But it was more of a review of it, more of a review of an issue. And can you report out so you can help us resolve the issue? Okay. All right, so we're going to get into the fraud, waste, and abuse update. So Sharon, if you can unmute yourself, and if you want to speak on this slide.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. As of, well, this number, you know, with fraud, waste, and abuse, this number is not correct as of today because we got another one in. But up to yesterday, we had 49 cases. 7 of them are still open. We are moving like lightning, although we are down a person as well. And we have a couple of high-profile cases that we're working on right now. But overall, we've only had 21 substantiated, 18 unsubstantiated, and 10 others. And others, that means we sent a letter to another entity because they were required by law to investigate that particular incident and then get back to us with what was going on. And we've had 12 inquiries. As the city is opening up, the hotline, when I say opening up, we will always open, but I'm talking about employees returning to work. We are finding that we're getting a little bit busier. Are there any questions?
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Sharon. All right, so administrative items. Since the last meeting, our budget was in fact approved. We got one, you know, the major budget item change was we got our FTE added back in. It was only, you know, as I mentioned earlier, half an FTE for FY22. So after FY22, we'll have a full FTE back. So, okay. I can't see it. All right. External audit was also approved, and as we mentioned, we've moved to a new firm. We've got Sherry Beckert. As a matter of fact, they have recently started. They're local here, based in Virginia Beach. So from a logistics standpoint, we look forward to working with them, and hopefully things will go a lot smoother, especially with the logistics and the availability, because they are in fact local. Okay. All right. You want to go to the next slide? Beginning June 21st, we are transitioning into a return to work model. I believe the city manager sent out directive to his staff and all his respective departments, asking everybody return to work. I believe it was June 14th. It may have been revised to June 21st, but we are going to align with that and transition back into a June 21st opening, and where individuals need to work at home. You know, a request is going to come to me, but that's going to be the exception, and as opposed to the operating conditions we've operated for the last 13, 14 months. Okay. Also, as we sent out to you earlier, in-person meetings, I believe I don't know if it was an executive order that expired.
The governor's declaration of emergency is likely to end at the end of the month, and the ability to meet virtually is predicated on that order.
Yeah, so I think from a logistics standpoint, it's easier to do in person, you know, and if we have to do have somebody on a speakerphone or so forth, you know, we can accommodate that. But for future meetings, unless otherwise specified, we are going to return back to in-person meetings, and that way Karen won't have to be chatting her questions. So, okay. As I mentioned, from a staffing update, we want to congratulate Danny Reinhardt. Danny, as I mentioned previously, he passed his CIA exam early on, and then recently he passed his CFE, Certified Fraud Examiner. And as of earlier this year, can't remember the exact date, Danny was promoted to Senior Fraud Investigator. So we want to thank Danny, working under the tutelage of Sharon, and thanks Sharon for your mentorship to help elevate Danny so that he's in a position to earn his promotion. But we want to thank Danny. He's done everything you know we've asked for him, and so we're proud to have been able to promote him. May 2021, as I mentioned, we lost Stephen, and he was supposed to be leading up the surface water regulatory compliance audit. So I'm working with Ken on that. And as I mentioned, Ken is working with us as a contracted worker through Advocates. Okay. Our annual retreat is going to be July 16th. We're going to go over any city policy changes. There's some changes to the Yellow Book. You know, Sharon and Karen, I know you guys are familiar with the Yellow Book, so there's been some updates. So we want to make sure we sync up our policies and procedures with the new updates to the government auditing standards as well. So those are all things we're going to be talking about at the annual retreat. Okay. All right. Last slide. Okay, so we've got the audit schedule up. As I said, you know, obviously we're going to send out all the reminders. Everything's moving into the back to live. Okay, and Rosanna, the next slide. All right, and so before I turn it back to to Sharon for the closing comments, once again, I want to thank my staff for the hard work during fiscal year 21, the challenges of the pandemic, working from home while still trying to be productive and maintain a service level that is expected of each of us, okay? And thank the audit committee and the support of the council and the other committee you guys have given us throughout the year, okay? All right, so Sharon, I'm gonna turn it back to you to close it out and for any closing comments or questions.
Thanks, Lyndon. Certainly appreciate the support of all the staff and all your hard work, and special congratulations to Daniel and his accomplishments as he moves forward. And
Thank you.
And I see that Karen has posted a couple of comments and congratulatory remarks. Emil, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
I share your exact same thoughts to the group. Over.
Just keep up the good work, and we look forward to getting together in our September meeting face to face, and the meeting is adjourned.
Okay, thank you. Everybody have a great day. And
Thank you.
enjoy the 3-day
Bye.
weekend.
Bye.